Hi, I'm Quence. Welcome to week 5 of my series of reviews for season 2 of the Playdate, Panic's handheld gaming console. Each week, 2 brand new games from different developers appear like magic on your Playdate system. Our new games for week 5 are Tiny Turnip and Chance's Lucky Escape. Friends, I'm so excited to talk to you about Tiny Turnip, because this is easily the highlight of Season 2 for me so far. In Tiny Turnip, which was created by Luke Sanderson, you play as a tiny turnip who has been granted arms, with which you can grab and climb. You spin the crank to position your arms, and you press the B button to grab onto something with one hand, at which point your other hand will automatically let go. Then you can turn the crank to move the other hand, grab again, and so on until you've climbed to where you're trying to get to. If you've played Astrobot, there's a monkey power-up in that game that lets you climb in kind of a similar fashion. I think there's also a few VR climbing games that have a similar feel to it, just to try to give you an idea of what this is like. Traversal is the name of the game in Tiny Turnip. It's all about the fun and challenge of maneuvering your way around the world using your strange turnip method of transportation. And it is immediately satisfying. Rocking back and forth, spinning your arms around your body, gradually moving higher and higher or lower or side to side as the case may be. It feels great. There's just something inherently gratifying about the style of movement in this game. It takes a little bit of effort. You really gotta work to get to where you're trying to go, which means that every movement, even tiny ones, feel like a success. Now, your ultimate goal in Tiny Turnip is to find 4 special magical vegetables. And along the way, there are also a bunch of optional stars for you to collect. The first game that came to my mind as I started playing this was Celeste, which also has you overcoming tough platforming challenges with the option of going for various power-ups and rewards along the way. That's not an inaccurate comparison. I think if you're a fan of Celeste, Tiny Turnip is something you'll like too. But I quickly realized that unlike the more level-based Celeste, Tiny Turnip is a full-on Metroidvania. The entire game takes place across one large, interconnected map with a few distinct areas to explore. So then, I really got excited once I figured this out, because I love platforming challenges, and I love Metroidvanias, and you combine those with a unique control scheme and traversal method, throw in a turnip, baby, you've got a stew going. And what a stew it is! I've just gone over the very basics of the game so far, but as you progress, you'll unlock new moves and mechanics too. For example, you can retract your arms to revert to pure turnip form, at which point you can rotate the crank to spin yourself around in an almost morph ball-esque fashion. You'll also get the ability to swim, or grab onto a surface with both hands at once to charge up a big jump. All of the new moves you learn allow you to access new areas or return to old ones more easily, and all of them are exciting to learn and a joy to execute. There's a bit of a learning curve to each one, but none of them feel tacked on. They all eventually feel like a natural progression of your moveset. What makes them really sing is that they all feed back into the core mechanic of the game, which is, of course, climbing and reaching new areas. After a while, you'll become accustomed to the controls, and you'll be zipping and swinging all over the place with speed and confidence. This is one of those games that really feels like something new for your brain to learn. A bit like learning an instrument or something. You start out kind of fuzzy, but you keep going, you gain experience, you learn new abilities, and eventually you master it. Naturally, the game does get progressively harder, and you'll be given tougher and tougher areas to clear as you progress. There are spikes and other hazards which kill you if you touch them, sending you back to the last checkpoint you reached. Some of the toughest challenges I faced were in mastering the game's physics. If you position yourself and swing one arm, then let go mid-swing, you'll actually keep the momentum of your swing as you go flying off, allowing you to reach new areas that you wouldn't be able to grab onto normally. It took me until late in the game to really key into how to do this consistently, but what's cool is that most obstacles can be tackled in more than one way. You might watch someone else play this and see them moving with completely different techniques than you did, or jumping from higher or lower angles. that maybe didn't make sense for the way that you've been playing. This is an example of a game that doesn't hold your hand and is better off for it, allowing you to discover what form of movement works best for you, and rewarding you with a unique sense of joy when you manage to finagle yourself across a particularly tricky gap to get that star or perhaps a key which unlocks a new location. I only have a couple of minor nitpicks with this one. While the checkpoints are for the most part pretty generous, there were a few multi-part areas where I struggled in a later section, so that when I died there, I would have to go all the way back to the beginning, repeating the earlier sections I had already mastered numerous times before I could get back and attempt the part I had difficulty with again. It could be repetitive and frustrating. Honestly, this sort of thing is par for the course for games like this. It's a minor nit, but I do wish the game forced you to master some of the harder techniques earlier on, because I got away with not using them for a long time before I had to go back and relearn what I was doing to fix my own mistakes. My other minor complaint has to do with the Metroidvania-ness of it all. The map is pretty big, and you don't get a much easier way to move around it until late in the game. There were a couple of times after getting one of those big vegetables that I had no idea where I was supposed to go next, and I ended up backtracking around the same areas repeatedly until I finally spotted a path that I missed or a place I could use a new technique to move on. This is not exactly an uncommon side effect of Metroidvanias, but because the control method in this game takes such an effort to execute, it made this a little bit more painful. The map on your pause screen isn't super helpful, and it would have been nice if there were just a couple more hints as to where to head next. Other than that, Tiny Turnip is as good as they come on the Playdate. It took me around 3.5 hours to finish. Your time may vary depending on how much you die or how much wandering you do, but that's a pretty meaty adventure in my book, and that's not including finding every star on the map either. Every section of the game is surprising. There's a great progression of new mechanics which feel natural and additive, including a couple toward the end of the game that are really clever. Even when I was getting frustrated trying to tackle certain sections again and again, I was always ready to pick the game back up. It was hard for me to put this one down until it was finished. Good news for non-Playdate owners, the creator of this game is working on another game called Turnip Mountain coming to Steam, which is essentially a larger, expanded take on this same concept. I can't wait to check this game out. I would also love a Playdate sequel to this version specifically, because I do think that the crank adds a lot to the game feel. Oh, and the music is awesome too. It's got everything going for it, it's Tiny Turnip, and it's almost justification enough for the existence of Playdate's Season 2. Okay, enough enthusiastic praise, I'm sick of that. Believe it or not, there's another game out this week, and it's called Chance's Lucky Escape. Chance's Lucky Escape is a throwback to classic point-and-click adventure games created by Goloso Games and Julia Minamata. You play as Chance, a dog who's being chased by the police amidst his efforts to commit crimes. Chance is a very lucky dog, sort of. There's a kind of a Mr. Magoo energy to the whole affair, as he repeatedly finds himself in dire straits, and it's up to you to point and click him to safety. Once again, my friends, I was so excited when I started playing Chance's Lucky Escape. I've mentioned this in other Playdate reviews that I'm a big fan of classic adventure games, and that's what this is. You even have an honest-to-God mouse cursor, which you move around the screen with the D-pad in order to examine objects, collect things, and access them from your inventory. Naturally, you'll need to use your inventory items with objects in the environment in order to solve puzzles. This game has a few things going for it. For one, it smartly adapts the point-and-click style to the Playdate. Sure, maybe dragging a fake mouse cursor across the screen with the D-pad isn't terribly efficient, but it moves quickly enough, and I appreciate that Chance himself automatically zips to whatever it is you click on. You don't need to watch him walk across the screen or anything like that. It feels snappy. On top of that, the art style is terrific, the story is cute, it has a great sense of humor. All the pieces are in place here for a memorable, charming adventure. And yet, it gives me no pleasure to say that Chance's Lucky Escape turned out to be one of my least favorite games of this season, and the reason for that is pretty simple. It's very short. There are a total of 6 chapters in the game, and each one consists of maybe 1 or 2 screens that you move between, with maybe 2 or 3 minor puzzles you need to connect and complete in order to move on, plus some dialogue and story setup. The entire game took me roughly 30 minutes or so to get through. It's to the point where I actually was a little worried because I generally try to avoid showing solutions to puzzles or what might be considered late game spoilers in my reviews, but there's so little content in this game, I'm not actually sure if I can 100% avoid that before running out of footage to show. Now look, a short game isn't necessarily the worst thing ever, especially for a tiny handheld like the Playdate. Something bite-sized can be great if it's justified by the gameplay. But the problem here isn't just the length of it, it's that it takes almost no brain power or critical thinking to muster your way through. The puzzles are quite linear, and you only ever have one area to work in at a time, so you can brute force your way through each chapter without even really meaning to, just by trying to click on everything you can. The pieces are laid out in front of you so readily, you can't really help but trip over the solutions. This is something I've been complaining about for I think all of the adventure-style games that I've played on Playdate so far, although this is the biggest offender of it. But they all feel just a little too scared to challenge the player with tricky puzzles, which is a big part of what this genre of games is known for. They're puzzle games. Give me some puzzles. Chance's Lucky Escape even has a very overt homage to The Secret of Monkey Island, but nothing even comes close to approaching that game's level of clever puzzles. And listen, I'm not asking for Myst-style brain burners here. It doesn't have to be the hardest game in the world, but make me do a little bit of thinking. If there had been more chapters with a more elaborate story, this might have been able to get away with being something more akin to a visual novel, but it's over far too quickly, and all you're left with are the puzzles, which really leave you wanting more. Maybe this would be a better fit for younger gamers, but for me, unfortunately, I was left wanting a lot more. Chance's Lucky Escape was a real big miss for me this week. Maybe it's because I'm an adventure game snob, I don't know. It's cute, don't get me wrong, but it's just so slight. I can't imagine it leaving a big impression on anyone except maybe younger kids. Perhaps that's why they paired it this week with Tiny Turnip, which is one of the bigger games of the season, and which for me was almost a total home run. Something I always try to keep in mind is that the size of the teams that makes these games is very small. Often it's between 1 and 6 people, say. The budgets are low and the development time, I'm sure, is not extensive, so I don't want to go too hard on any of these teams. I'm sure Tiny Turnip was helped by the fact there is a larger version of that game in the works for Steam, and the length of the game might be a little artificially inflated because it's Metroidvania, so you are going to have some backtracking in it. But hey, when you're working with something like the Playdate, if you can take those shortcuts and you know a smart way to make your game feel bigger, then you gotta take them. Let me know in the comments, were you as big a fan of Tiny Turnip as me? Are you excited for Turnip Mountain? And what'd you think of Chance's Lucky Escape? Was it also a disappointment for you? Then stay tuned, because there's only 1 week left of Season 2, so we're gonna see how they finish this season out next time.